Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission isn't just to talk about happiness or, offer a few simple tips.
No, not at all.
Instead, we're diving into a really comprehensive stack of resources. We're looking at things that bridge modern psychological techniques, the real how-to, with some of the ancient philosophical wisdom, which is more of the why.
And that's so crucial.
The central question we're trying to tackle is this. How do we actually build a genuinely good life? One that's deeply resilient and can withstand all the inevitable setbacks that life throws at us.
It's such an essential mission because I think most people are, they're building their lives on what turns out to be a faulty premise.
Yeah.
It's completely understandable, but it is flawed.
A faulty premise. What do you mean by that?
Well, we're taught, either implicitly or, sometimes very explicitly, to chase external factors.
You're right. The career ladder, getting more status, more money, the next big purchase. Yeah.
Exactly. All of that. But what we know from decades of scientific research is that this strategy it's just fundamentally flawed. And it's because of a really powerful psychological mechanism that, in effect, limits our emotional ceiling.
Okay, so let's unpack that flaw right at the start, because it sounds like it dictates why we even need to look at internal strategies in the first place.
It does.
We're talking about the foundational concept known as the hedonic treadmill, or I guess the more formal term is hedonic adaptation.
That's the one. The idea was formalized by a couple of psychologists, Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell, way back in 1971. And it really defines the baseline challenge that we all have to overcome.
The treadmill metaphor is so good because it suggests you're running, but staying in the same place.
Precisely. The idea is that humans have this relatively stable, often genetically and temperamentally influenced happiness set point.
Like a thermostat.
Exactly like a thermostat. Imagine a dial that, no matter what happens to you, good or bad, eventually tries to reset itself back to its original position.
So even major positive life changes, or major negative ones, they move the dial for a bit.
They shift that dial temporarily, for sure. But our psychological systems are just incredibly good at adapting. And so we eventually, inevitably, return to that predetermined baseline.
And there's a classic study that illustrates this so perfectly. It's almost haunting. I think it was Brickman, Coates, and Janoff-Bullman in 1978.
Oh, that's the one. It's unforgettable once you hear about it. They looked at two very extreme groups of people.
Lottery winners on one hand and accident victims on the other who had become paraplegics. Just about the most extreme life-altering events you can imagine.
You couldn't get more extreme. And of course, the initial emotional spike for the lottery winners was immense, pure elation. And the trauma for the accident victims was just profound.
But the truly staggering thing was what happened over the long term.
Yes. After that immediate initial impact wore off both groups, they typically returned to their average long-term happiness levels.
So the millionaires weren't permanently ecstatic.
Not at all. And the accident victims, while facing enormous challenges, were not permanently miserable. The treadmill had pulled them back to their baseline.
That is such a chilling piece of information. But it's also kind of liberating.
It is.
Because it functions as a psychological protection mechanism, doesn't it? On one hand, it stops us from getting complacent after a big success.
Right, you don't just rest on your laurels forever.
And critically, on the other hand, it allows us to adapt to and eventually accept these really unchangeable, traumatic circumstances.
It absolutely does. But it also delivers a very hard truth.
Which is?
That lasting, permanent gains in happiness are virtually impossible to achieve through external changes alone.
So getting that promotion you worked for years to get.
Or buying that dream house, or even achieving some level of fame, it all eventually just becomes the new normal.
The new baseline.
The new baseline. You habituate to the circumstances, and then what do? You start comparing your life to an even higher bar, and you start demanding the next success. The whole system just forces us to constantly run just to maintain the same emotional place.
So if chasing external things is an ineffective long-term strategy, then our mission for this deep dive is crystal clear.
It is.
We have to explore the internal strategies, the specific skills, the profound philosophical frameworks that allow us to genuinely shift that emotional baseline up. We're moving from chasing external rewards to building internal resilience.
And we're going to use everything from, clinical tools like mindfulness and CBT to wisdom traditions from all around the globe.
And we need to give you actionable steps, things you can actually use. So we're going to start with what you can deploy right now, today, to manage the immediate impact of stress and difficult emotions.
Let's do it.
So let's start with the tools that offer the most immediate relief, the ones that give you a sense of control. We're focusing on emotional regulation through what we're calling mindfulness in action.
And the core purpose of all these mindful techniques, as researchers always describe it, is to create one thing, a crucial, brief pause.
That pause, it sounds so simple, but it's everything.
It's the most valuable real estate in your entire emotional life.
Yeah.
Because that pause interrupts the automatic and often destructive emotional reaction cycle.
Okay, so a trigger happens. A stressful email lands in your inbox, you get a critical comment, a sudden worry pops into your head.
And instead of the brain immediately firing off some impulsive, protective response like lashing out, mindfulness provides that necessary space.
Right, and in that space.
In that space, you can transition from an impulsive emotional reaction to a thoughtful, intentional response. It's a total game changer.
We've got 5 really powerful, accessible tools here. Let's start with the one that's probably the fastest physiological reset available, mindful breathing.
Right. When we experience stress, even just minor irritation, our sympathetic nervous system kicks into high gear
And you can feel it in your body.
immediately. Your breath becomes quick, shallow. It's often concentrated high up in the chest. That's your body preparing for action.
So this mindful breathing technique is designed to do the opposite.
It's designed specifically to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, that's the rest and digest system, to literally reverse that physical state and regain an immediate sense of calm and control.
And there's a very specific, methodical way to do this for it to be most effective, right?
There is. First, you just need to notice your natural breath and anchor yourself. It helps to place one hand on your chest and one on your stomach.
Okay.
The technique relies on diaphragmatic breathing. So you want to slow inhale through the nose for a count of 4. And as you do it, you should feel your belly expand while your chest stays relatively still. You're breathing down into your diaphragm.
And then you hold?
Then you hold, just gently, for a count of 4. You're maintaining that relaxed state. And then, crucially, the final step is the slow, elongated exhale through your mouth for 6 to 8 counts.
Longer on the exhale than the inhale.
Much longer. That long exhale is the signal to the vagus nerve that everything is safe. The slow release of air is what explicitly calms the nervous system down.
And you just repeat that.
You repeat that cycle maybe 5 to 10 times, or just until you feel that initial sense of ease return. It's an immediate pathway back to regulation. It's amazing.
Okay, moving on. What happens when we need to interrupt an automatic destructive reaction in the heat of the moment when things are already escalating?
That's where the STOP technique comes in. It's a 4-step method, a really quick reset.
Yeah.
It's inspired by approaches like dialectical behavior therapy or DBT and the pioneering work of John Kabat-Zinn.
And this is for when you're about to do something you'll regret.
Exactly. It's highly effective because it's so simple and you can deploy it anywhere. It's designed to be used the second you feel your emotions intensifying and you feel like an action is imminent.
So let's break it down. STOP, S is for.
S stands for stop. You halt the current action immediately. If you're about to fire off that angry email or hit send on a nasty text or lash out at a colleague, you just freeze. It's a literal suspension of movement.
Okay. Then T is take a breath.
We just talked about how effective mindful breathing is. Even just 1 or 2 slow, grounding breaths can help anchor the nervous system and pull you out of that frantic emotional space.
So S stop, T take a breath, O is observe.
Yes, and this is where you bring a non-judgmental awareness to what's happening, both inside you and around you.
So you're like a scientist of your own experience.
A curious scientist.
Yeah.
Notice your thoughts. Are they catastrophic? This is the end of the world. Notice your emotions. Is this pure anger, or is it fear, or is it profound sadness? And notice your physical sensations, a clenched jaw, tightened shoulders. This observation creates that necessary space between the stimulus and the potential reaction.
And finally, P is proceed mindfully.
With a clearer, more grounded head, you decide the best, most intentional next action. Perhaps the mindful decision is to wait 30 minutes before responding.
Or maybe it's deciding to address the situation in person rather than over email.
Precisely. The beauty of it is its immediacy. It can take anywhere from 15 seconds to a few minutes, and it's just a vital tool against that autopilot behavior that gets us into so much trouble.
It's like the ultimate antidote to regret.
It really is. But you're right, sometimes emotions are much more complex. They're more persistent than a quick pause can handle. They stick around.
Right.
And that's where we move to our third tool, the RAIN practice. This is a much deeper processor for those intense, difficult emotions, like persistent anxiety or a deep-seated anger. The framework asks you to treat the emotion as a temporary visitor.
A temporary visitor. I like that. It sounds like a powerful paradigm shift.
Yeah.
We're not just pausing the action anymore. We're actually engaging with the feeling itself.
Absolutely. Instead of resisting the difficult feeling or denying it, which, by the way, often just feeds it with more tension, rain encourages you to face it directly. You allow it to be there so it can process and shift naturally.
So RAIN, let's break it down.
Mm.
R is recognize.
You need to identify the emotion specifically. Saying, I feel awful, is too vague. It's not helpful.
This is just a big cloud of bad.
A big cloud of bad. Instead, you name it. This is impatience, or fear is present, or I am feeling frustrated. Just naming the emotion moves it from this vague, overwhelming state to a specific, manageable object of your awareness. And that, in itself, reduces its intensity.
Okay, that makes sense. Then A is allow.
And this is often the hardest step for people. You have to let the emotion exist without immediate resistance or judgment or denial.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine a young person whose parent just canceled an important weekend visit. They might feel deep disappointment, but their instinct is probably to suppress it and say, I should be fine, I'm an adult.
Right, I shouldn't feel this way.
Allowing means creating space for that disappointment to actually exist and trusting that it will shift naturally once it's been accepted.
And we investigate the I, but this is a specific kind of investigation.
It is. It's done with radical curiosity, not judgment, and not with a desperate need to fix it or analyze its root cause right then and there.
So what kinds of questions are you asking yourself?
You might gently inquire, where do I feel this anxiety in my body? Is it a knot in my stomach or a pressure in my chest? Or what story or thought is playing on a loop right now? It's a gentle, non-fixing exploration, the same kind of kindness you'd extend to a deeply struggling friend.
And N stands for non-attachment or nurture.
Right. This is where you kind of step back and observe the emotion as a passing experience, like a cloud moving across the sky. That's the non-attachment part.
And the nurture part.
Simultaneously, you offer warmth, kindness, and support to yourself. That's the nurture. You acknowledge the pain without becoming completely consumed by the story it's telling you.
These techniques are amazing for anchoring the mental and emotional processing, but we know emotions are also profoundly physical. They live in the body. Which brings us to our next tool, mindful movement.
Yes, this is so often overlooked. Stress and difficult feelings aren't just thoughts. They're held in the musculature and the fascia of the body.
Chronic anxiety can show up as constant tightness in your shoulders or your neck.
Or deep sadness can express itself as a slumped posture, a physical heaviness. Mindful movement uses intentional physical activity, not as an escape, but as a way to safely release that trapped emotional tension and help the nervous system settle down.
And the core of this tool is intention and attention. So we're not talking about just going to the gym to distract yourself with a hard workout.
No, not at all. We're talking about using movement to tune in. Good examples would be something like a walking meditation, where you slow down and focus intensely on the sensation of your feet connecting with the ground.
Or even just stretching.
Stretching is perfect. You deliberately tune into the tension held in those common areas, the jaw, the hips, the lower back, and you consciously breathe into those spots, imagining the tension releasing.
It sounds like it could be very powerful.
It can be. Even slow, flowing motions inspired by Tai Chi or some gentle yoga, when you perform them with the sole intention of noticing and releasing tension, can create a profound difference. The key is to check in with the body and create a safe space to work through the feelings, allowing that physical energy associated with the emotion to dissipate naturally.
Okay, so that brings us to our final and maybe the most foundational tool in this section, self-compassion practice.
Yes.
And this isn't self-pity or self-indulgence, right? It's the radical idea of treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would automatically give to a close friend who is struggling.
It's a direct counterattack on the harsh internal critic, the voice in your head.
That voice that says, you failed, you should be stronger, you should be smarter, you should be faster.
Self-compassion replaces that voice with nurturing care, and it's built on 3 pillars. Self-kindness, which is just being warm and understanding toward yourself.
And the second one is recognizing shared humanity.
Yes, understanding that everyone struggles. Failure is a normal part of the human experience. You are not alone in this.
And the third is mindful acceptance of those difficult emotions.
So practically speaking, what does this actually look like when I'm feeling really harsh toward myself?
A really powerful technique is called the self-compassion break. If you feel a wave of self-criticism coming on, you can physically anchor yourself. Maybe placing a hand over your heart or on your cheek. Take a deep breath and offer yourself 3 statements.
Okay.
First, this is a moment of suffering. That's the mindfulness part, just acknowledging the pain.
Right.
Second, suffering is part of being human. That's the shared humanity part.
Connecting yourself to everyone else.
And third, may I be kind to myself in this moment. And that is the self-kindness.
Another simple technique is using loving kindness phrases, just silently repeating things like, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I find peace.
And what if that inner critic is just particularly loud and stubborn?
Try writing a letter to yourself. But here's the trick. Pretend you are a truly compassionate friend who knows all your struggles, all your weaknesses, and all your strengths.
Ah, so you write it from that outside perspective.
Writing from that supportive perspective helps externalize the pain and creates the psychological room for natural healing, rather than just trying to suppress the feeling or fight it, which almost never works.
That gives us such a critical, immediate toolkit for emotional regulation. Now, if part 1 was the emergency reset button, the first aid kit,
And then part 2 is the cognitive framework. It's the map to understand why we get so overwhelmed in the first place.
we're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
CBT is one of the most rigorously tested and effective psychological models we have for managing common mental health challenges. It's hugely influential because it views 4 components: your thoughts, your physical feelings, your emotions, and your behaviors as fundamentally interlinked.
And they're constantly creating a vicious cycle.
A vicious cycle that maintains these unhelpful moods, like anxiety or low mood.
And the crucial pivot, the entire foundation of the CBT approach, is understanding the ABC model.
Yes, it posits that emotional distress isn't caused directly by the situation itself.
But by our interpretation of the situation.
Exactly. Specifically, our thoughts, or what we call our cognitions.
So you have the situation, which is A, that triggers cognition's thoughts, which is B, and that leads to autonomic physical symptoms and specific behaviors, which is C.
And that forms a self-perpetuating loop, a feedback loop. Central to this are what are called negative automatic thoughts, or NATs.
Nax.
These are those unhelpful, often biased thoughts that just pop into your mind without any conscious effort. They feel like facts, they feel 100% true, but they were very often just interpretations.
So let's dedicate some time to mapping out 2 specific vicious cycles that CBT is designed to break. Let's start with the cycle of low mood or depression.
Okay, this cycle typically starts with persistent negative thoughts, and these thoughts are often very self-critical. I am a failure, I'm useless.
Where they involve cognitive errors like overgeneralization.
Because this one thing went wrong, everything will always go wrong. Or mind reading. I know they all think I'm an idiot.
And this negative internal environment is then linked to the physiological symptoms of low mood.
Yes, the lethargy, the reduction in motivation, difficulties with sleeping or eating, which sometimes relate to neurochemical changes like low serotonin.
That physical and mental state then leads directly to the behavioral component of the cycle.
Which is often avoidance and withdrawal.
Right. So you start avoiding social invitations or you put off important tasks at work. And that avoidance, it offers this immediate short-term relief from the burden of having to make an effort. But that's the trap, isn't it?
That is the absolute core of the trap. The short-term relief is so seductive, but the long-term cost is immense.
Because withdrawal causes you to miss out on positive reinforcement experiences.
You miss out on the feeling of pleasure you'd get from a hobby or the feeling of achievement from finishing a task. And this absence of any positive input just reinforces the initial negative thought pattern, which completes the cycle and drives your mood even lower.
And we should be really clear here. It's vital to acknowledge the severity. When low mood becomes debilitating and your thoughts shift to hopelessness or self-harm, or you start thinking your feelings are non-negotiable facts.
That is the moment professional help is absolutely necessary. You need to contact a helpline or your GP.
Okay, let's shift gears now and look at the cycle of anxiety and the fight or flight response.
Right, so we all need appropriate, productive anxiety. That's the good stuff.
It's what helps you prepare for an exam or react safely if a car suddenly pulls out in front of you.
Exactly. But unhelpful anxiety triggers a massive biological response that releases adrenaline and cortisol, preparing your body for a threat that doesn't actually exist.
Let's detail those physical symptoms because I think understanding their purpose is the key to taking back control.
It absolutely is. They're all about survival. The quickened, shallow breath is designed to supply more oxygen to your large muscle groups. The faster heart rate pumps blood to those muscles. The muscle tension prepares you for immediate action. Blood is diverted from non-essential systems, like digestion.
Which causes the dry mouth and the classic butterflies in your stomach.
That's it. And your mind's focus narrows completely onto the perceived threat, which leads to poor concentration on anything else. It's a system that works perfectly if you're facing a lion, but it's catastrophic if you're facing a performance review at work.
And when this extreme anxiety occurs, often unexpectedly, and it peaks really intensely, we call that a panic attack.
It's terrifying, but the symptoms themselves are harmless. They peak within 5 to 10 minutes because your body physically cannot sustain that level of adrenaline for much longer.
And the core psychological issue that fuels the panic attack, you call it catastrophic misinterpretation.
That's the one. The physical symptoms, which are the body's harmless temporary responses, are misinterpreted as immediate life-threatening danger.
So your heart pounds, and the negative automatic thought is,
I'm having a heart attack.
you feel a bit dizzy.
And the gnat is, I'm going to faint and completely embarrass myself. This misinterpretation is what spirals the physical anxiety into outright terror.
And the behavioral response to this spiral is often what are called safety-seeking behaviors.
Right. Carrying water everywhere, constantly checking your pulse, bringing medicine with you just in case, or escaping a social situation as soon as you feel a twinge of anxiety.
This is another one of those traps, isn't it?
It is the main long-term problem. These behaviors, they artificially reduce your anxiety in the short term, which gives you the feeling of control.
But
They maintain the problem long-term because they prevent you from ever testing your core belief. You never learn that you can cope without that crutch. The feeling of safety gets attributed to the safety behavior, not to your own ability to endure the anxiety.
right, I only survived because I had my water bottle.
Not because the panic attack is temporary and harmless.
Exactly. Okay, finally, let's touch on the cycle of worry. Here we need to distinguish between productive worry
Which leads to action, like preparing a budget or studying for a test.
and unproductive worry.
Which is the exhaustive kind. It jumps relentlessly from one thing to another, focusing on things that are uncertain, unpredictable, and uncontrollable.
Like worrying about the distant future health of a family member, there's nothing you can do about it right now.
And this unproductive worry quickly leads to anxiety about worrying itself. You start thinking, I worry so much, I must be going crazy.
And that's a whole new cycle.
It's a relentless, draining cycle that keeps you permanently stuck in the future, completely unable to enjoy or engage with the present moment.
Okay, now that we understand these maps of distress, let's go deep into the CBT tools that are designed to break the cycles. The first essential step for any effective self-help strategy is to define the journey with SMART goals.
Goals act as a precise roadmap. Without them, your self-help efforts lack focus, and it's impossible to monitor if you're making any progress. The acronym ensures your goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-limited.
The contrast here is so important. A non-SMART goal would be something like, I would like to feel less anxious this week.
How do you measure that? How do you know when you've achieved it? It's just too vague to be useful.
But a SMART goal would be,
A SMART goal would be, I will implement the worry containment strategy every evening for 20 minutes at 8 p.m., 5 days this week, and I will track my mood in a diary afterwards.
that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant to reducing worry, and time-limited. It transforms a vague aspiration into an active, concrete task.
Okay, so for tackling that low mood cycle, the key tool is behavioral activation, or BA.
Given that low mood leads to avoidance, which basically starves the brain of positive experiences, BA is the structured methodology for forcing activity, regardless of how you're feeling.
That phrase is so crucial. You follow the plan, not the mood. You are deliberately interrupting the avoidance cycle.
And BA involves systematically scheduling 3 types of activities, right?
Yes, routine activities like personal hygiene, basic chores,
Mhm.
pleasurable activities like hobbies, social time, listening to music, and necessary activities like work tasks, paying bills, filing important forms.
And there are 5 distinct steps to implement this.
First, you list out a wide range of activities you used to enjoy or that you need to do. Second, you create an easy, medium, hard hierarchy for those activities.
You start with easy stuff.
Always start easy.
Sick.
Third, you schedule a mixture of them using smart detail. And critically, you follow the plan even if you only feel 1% motivated to do it.
Fourth, you do them. And the 5th step is review.
Immediately after, you check in. How did that activity affect my mood? What was difficult about it? Did I get any sense of pleasure or achievement from it? And if the goal was too hard, you just adjust it downward for the next attempt. You have to trust that the improvement, while it might be gradual, will follow the action.
Okay, next, to tackle the anxiety and panic cycle, we use graded exposure. This is designed to break that cycle of avoidance by teaching the body, through direct experience, that the feared stimulus is not a threat.
The underlying principle here is habituation. Think about getting into a freezing cold swimming pool.
The initial shock is overwhelming.
Right. But if you stay in without immediately jumping out, your body eventually adjusts to the temperature. Graded exposure provides the safe structure to allow that fight or flight response to naturally peak and then diminish on its own.
So anxiety is fed by two factors: overestimating the threat
I will faint.
and underestimating your ability to cope.
I cannot handle this feeling. Exposure is designed to correct both of those beliefs through direct lived experience.
And there are 4 ironclad rules for effective exposure.
The first rule is that it must be graded. You start with the least anxiety-provoking step. Maybe it's just imagining the scenario or looking at a photograph of the feared situation.
So if someone is afraid of going to the shops, they wouldn't start with a crowded supermarket on a Saturday.
Absolutely not. They might start by simply imagining standing outside the shop, then progressing to visiting a small local corner shop with a friend, and then, much later, going alone to a busy supermarket. It's a ladder.
The second rule is that it must be prolonged.
You have to stay in the situation until your anxiety reduces by at least half. If your anxiety starts at an 80 on a scale of 100, you must stay until it drops to a 40.
And that's mandatory.
It's mandatory because it allows your body to complete the full cycle, to experience the anxiety peaking and then reducing naturally, which proves to your brain that the feeling is temporary and survivable.
Third, it must be repeated.
4 to 5 times a week for maximum therapeutic benefit. You repeat each step on the ladder until the anxiety is significantly lower before you even think about moving up to the next, slightly harder exposure task.
And then there's the fourth rule, which I think feels the most counterintuitive for many people. It has to be done without distraction.
This means absolutely no safety behaviors, no deep breathing exercises, no relaxation techniques, no carrying your medicine or a bottle of water, no calling a friend on the phone for distraction.
You have to experience the anxiety raw and see that you can cope without those crutches.
And this is the point that often generates resistance. People ask, why no breathing exercises? I thought they were good.
Well, why not?
Because if you bring your anxiety down using a safety behavior, your brain attributes the relief to the safety behavior, not to the fact that the anxiety naturally peaked and then subsided on its own. You have to remove the crutch entirely to truly learn that you are capable of weathering the storm. This is how the body learns to stop monitoring and scanning for threats when none actually exist.
Okay, next up is containing worry. This is specifically for dealing with those vast, unproductive, hypothetical worries, the ones that focus on the uncertain, unpredictable, or uncontrollable.
This is a powerful boundary-setting tool for your mind. It starts by quickly classifying the worry. Is it practical? Can I do something about it right now? If so, do it.
Or is it hypothetical? Is it based on uncertainty?
If so, you contain it.
And the tool for that is the worry appointment.
Yes. Step 1. Schedule a specific worry time, say 20 minutes, non-negotiable, and crucially not near bedtime or in your bedroom.
Step 2. Throughout the day, when a hypothetical worry pops up, you write it down quickly in a word diary or a note on your phone, and then you set it aside.
And step 3 is vital for the rest of your day. Refocus on the present. You use your 5 senses to tune back into your current activity. If you're washing dishes, notice the temperature of the water, the smell of the soap, the sound of the plates. If the worry returns, you just write it down again and refocus.
Then step 4. During your scheduled worry appointment, you sit down and you worry freely about everything on your list.
And what people often find is that the urgency and the intensity of the worries are significantly reduced simply by having delayed them. When the 20 minutes is up, you stop. Regardless of whether you've solved anything, this practice helps you manage worries during the day and eventually teaches your brain to only engage with worry during that dedicated window.
Finally, we get to the intellectual cornerstone of CBT, cognitive restructuring, or thought challenging.
This is where we systematically break down those negative automatic thoughts, those gnats, which are so often extreme, biased, or just plain unrealistic.
And the ultimate goal here isn't to create some unrealistic, purely positive thought, but to arrive at a balanced, realistic thought that is based solely on the evidence.
This is the mechanism that reduces emotional distress, because distress is usually based on believing that those gnats are 100% factual.
So the process has 3 steps. Step 1, catch the hot thought.
This is the specific thought that's causing the most emotional distress. It's usually one that you rate at 60% belief or higher, and it matches the negative emotion you're feeling. For example, I blew that presentation, I am incompetent, and I'm definitely going to be fired.
Step 2. Look for evidence. This is the prosecution versus defense counsel analogy.
Right. You rigorously search for evidence for the thought and evidence against the thought, and you can only use facts, not your opinions or feelings.
So in the example of the presentation failure, evidence for the thought I am incompetent might be, I stumbled over my words on the first slide, or my boss frowned once during the talk.
And evidence against it might be, my boss actually complimented my preparation before the meeting. I answered 3 difficult questions really well, and I have received excellent performance reviews for the last 5 quarters. You should also ask yourself, what would a kind friend say in this situation?
And step 3 is to find an evidence-based alternative thought.
You summarize the evidence for and against, often linking the opposing viewpoints with but or and to create a realistic middle ground.
So the new thought, after challenging the evidence, might be,
It might be something like, I stumbled on the first slide and I felt very embarrassed, but I successfully navigated the Q&A section, and my strong performance history indicates that I am not incompetent. You then re-rate your belief in this new, balanced thought and the intensity of your original negative emotion. That shift in the rating proves the power of evidence over raw emotion.
okay, we have established a deep clinical toolbox for internal management. We've got immediate regulation and long-term cycle breaking.
But truly understanding the good life requires us to zoom out beyond the clinical and into the profound philosophical frameworks that define well-being across human civilization.
This is a critical transition because while CBT and mindfulness are vital for managing emotional distress, true well-being requires understanding the very definition of happiness.
And that definition varies fundamentally, structurally, across cultures, especially when we compare foundational Eastern and Western thought.
So let's start by defining the Western view, which primarily operates under 2 traditions, hedonic and eudaimonic.
The hedonic view is the dominant model in the contemporary West. It's deeply rooted in liberal individualism and consumer culture. Happiness here is defined simply as subjective well-being, or SWB.
So maximizing pleasure, maximizing positive feelings, and minimizing pain.
It's the philosophy that basically says, if I feel good right now, I am successful.
But the eudaimonic view, which is rooted in ancient Greece with thinkers like Aristotle, offers a profound contrast that I think is often misunderstood today.
It really is. For Aristotle, happiness wasn't just about pleasure. It was about actualizing one's full potential and capacities through activity in accordance with virtue.
So it's about flourishing.
It's about flourishing through being your best self, which may actually require discomfort and significant effort. Aristotle famously rejected pure hedonism, calling the pursuit of simple, sensory gratification a life fit for grazing animals.
Strong words. Now let's look at the profound differences that emerge when you compare these Western frameworks to Eastern schools of thought like Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and Sufism. We've identified 6 fundamental divergences that show just how differently the good life is conceptualized.
The first divergence is self-transcendence versus self-enhancement. Western psychology is, and has been for a long time, preoccupied with individualism. The goal is to enhance the self, raise your self-esteem, increase your autonomy, affirm a fixed self with clear boundaries. It's all about being the best you.
But Eastern traditions fundamentally de-emphasize the individual self. For example, in Buddhism, the individual self, the Atman, is often considered to be an illusion, the very root of our suffering.
And in Confucianism, psychological maturity is defined relationally. It's about transcending your personal desires for the sake of the group or the community.
And in Sufism and Hinduism, the goal is often ultimate union with the transcendent or the divine, where the individual self just loses its separate identity.
Exactly. Psychological maturity in the East is measured by self-transcendence, empathy, and wisdom. They often consider it overly individualistic pursuit of happiness as leading to more hostility or anger, rather than true peace.
The second difference relates back to that tension between eudaimonism versus hedonism. While modern Western well-being studies often lean so heavily on subjective pleasure,
The East is fundamentally eudaimonistic. It prioritizes virtue, moral conduct, and desire control far above simple sensory pleasure.
so Eastern perspectives are deeply suspicious of temporary bodily pleasures.
Very suspicious. Ascetic practices like rigorous fasting or periods of isolation are key methods for purification in traditions like Sufism. They deliberately run counter to the hedonistic perspective. They stress that happiness has to be value-based, achieved through morally justifiable means, not just any form of temporary gratification.
The third difference is our relationship with the world, harmony versus mastery. The Western tradition, rooted in the Enlightenment and the scientific method, sees humankind as privileged and kind of bound to analyze, manipulate, and control the environment for our benefit.
And the concept of environmental mastery is highly valued in Western well-being models. We see it as a sign of health.
But Eastern worldviews place humanity as a small, interconnected part of the cosmos.
In Taoism and Hinduism, the goal is not control or manipulation, but achieving harmony with others and with the whole cosmos. Virtue means adjustment to universal laws, the Tao or the Dharma, and prioritizing flexibility, humility, and mutual sympathy rather than imposing one's will on the world. It's a profound difference in approach.
The fourth difference is subtle, but it carries enormous weight. Contentment versus satisfaction.
Western well-being focuses heavily on life satisfaction, which is typically tied to goal achievement and desire gratification. You set a goal, you achieve it, you feel satisfied. For a while.
But contentment in the East is a much deeper, more spiritual and value-based concept.
It's a delicate balance of joy and sorrow that should be preserved regardless of external failures or social comparisons. It's an acceptance of results moment to moment with dignity. True contentment, stemming from realizing one's connection to the transcendent self, is meant to endure even when goals fail and desires go unmet.
The fifth distinction challenges a core tenet of Western hedonism, valuing prebis versus avoiding suffering.
Western hedonism sees the absence of negative emotions as a mandatory prerequisite for happiness. Suffering is bad and should be avoided at all costs.
But Eastern traditions, conversely, accept and often deliberately value suffering as an integral and essential part of life and spiritual development.
For the Buddhist, enduring suffering purifies past negative actions. For the Taoist, accepting unhappiness alongside happiness is the very mechanism that prevents future suffering.
I find the Sufi perspective here deeply moving. They view hardship as a necessary element of the path toward God, using the analogy that gold ore only becomes true gold after it's put through fire. Suffering is what transforms the person.
And this philosophical strength is evident even in political philosophy. Confucianism stresses the importance of sticking to virtue, even at a high hedonic cost. Confucius emphasized that true happiness can be found while eating coarse food, drinking plain water, and bending one arm for a pillow, provided one remains virtuous.
Finally, the sixth difference is the relevance versus relative irrelevance of spirituality.
In the secular West, spirituality is usually studied as a predictor of well-being, a factor that might make you happier.
But in the East, happiness is often inseparable from the metaphysical or religious worldview. Concepts like awakening, transcendence, and union with the divine, as seen in Sufism and Hinduism, are essential components of the definition of happiness itself.
And a Western clinician might struggle to quantify or even acknowledge these goals, sometimes dismissing them as non-scientific or even pathological in a purely secular model.
These differences show that the good life is a culturally defined enterprise. So to give the learner a tangible, actionable roadmap that synthesizes some of these ideas, we should turn to the Japanese concept of ikigai.
Ikigai. It translates beautifully to a reason to live. It combines iki, to live, and gai, reason. And it offers a highly structured visual approach to locating your purpose at the intersection of four essential domains.
The four elements of the ikigai framework are what you love, which is your passion.
What you're good at, which is your vocation or your skills.
What the world needs, which is your mission.
And what you can be paid for, which is your profession.
The power of the concept lies in the intersections of these circles. For instance, if you only align what you love and what you're good at, you find passion, but you might lack a sense of purpose or financial stability.
Right. Or if you align your mission, your vocation, and your profession, you can find fulfillment, but you might not actually love the work, which can lead to emotional exhaustion. Ikigai demands that all four be in balance.
Finding that deep alignment brings significant measurable benefits. Increased happiness and fulfillment, a profound reduction in stress, enhanced motivation, and even improved health outcomes.
Research suggests that alignment might boost the immune system, lower anxiety, and potentially contribute to longevity. But finding your ikigai requires serious long-term self-reflection and practice. It's a journey that emphasizes growth and alignment, not a quick single realization.
We've built the clinical map and we've explored the philosophical blueprints. Now, let's shift back to what is probably the single most compelling piece of hard data on human flourishing that exists today, the results of the Harvard study of adult development.
The study is just unparalleled globally. It has been running for nearly 80 years, making it one of the world's longest, most comprehensive longitudinal studies of adult life.
It began tracking 268 Harvard sophomores back in 1938, that was the Grant study, and later expanded to include 456 Boston inner-city residents, the Gluck study, to ensure it had some demographic breadth.
And over 8 decades, the researchers tracked everything imaginable. Their physical health, their career successes, their IQ scores, their hobbies, political views, family lives, everything.
The initial hypothesis probably focused on things like status or intelligence being the key to success, but the decades-long conclusion has been staggeringly, consistently simple.
It's unambiguous. The surprising key finding, repeated across both cohorts, is that close relationships are the most powerful influence on health and longevity.
Not money, not fame.
No. They are far better predictors of long, happy lives than your initial social class, your intellectual capability, your genes, or your professional achievements.
And here is the truly predictive detail that should cause everyone to just stop and reconsider their priorities. The people who were the most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80.
Think about that. Satisfaction in relationships was found to be a better predictor of physical health and brain function 3 decades later than cholesterol levels at age 50.
That's astounding. We're constantly monitoring our diet, our exercise, biomarkers like blood pressure and cholesterol. We spend billions on improving these factors.
Yet the strongest predictor of whether you'll be healthy in old age is the quality of your human connections.
The study director, Dr. Robert Waldinger, states it very pointedly. He says, "Loneliness kills. It's as powerful as smoking or alcoholism."
Those individuals who were socially isolated lived measurably shorter lives. The loners often died earlier and suffered worse physical and mental decline. The people with warmer, close relationships live longer and happier.
And the protective effect of good relationships, it works on both the body and brain.
It acts as a buffer against life stressors, reducing the output of stress hormones like cortisol and lowering chronic inflammation. And they delay mental and physical decline, keeping memory sharper for longer.
They even found that marital satisfaction protects mental health in old age. Those who had happy marriages in their 80s reported that their moods didn't suffer, even on days when they were experiencing significant physical pain.
And critically, the relationships don't have to be perfect or smooth. This wasn't a search for couples who never fought.
No.
They observed that couples who bickered day in and day out, but felt deep down that they could truly count on each other when faced with a crisis, still experienced the profound protective effects on their memory functions. This is compared to couples in low-conflict but cold marriages.
So emotional warmth and reliability are the keys.
Those are the keys. George Vaillant, who directed the study for decades, synthesized the findings by highlighting 6 factors that predicted healthy aging for the Harvard men: mature coping mechanisms, physical activity, absence of alcohol abuse and smoking, a healthy weight, and a stable marriage.
And for the inner city men, there was one more factor.
For the inner city men, education was an additional crucial factor because higher education correlated with better health habits, less smoking, and more moderate alcohol use.
This research also completely debunked the old psychological theory that our personalities set like plaster by age 30.
Oh, completely. They tracked men who were, in their own words, train wrecks in their 20s and watched them evolve into wonderful octogenarians. The capacity for transformative change is always, always present.
Moving from that long-term roadmap of relationships, let's focus now on 2 powerful, specific physiological levers we can pull on a daily basis. Levers that directly influence our brain chemistry: gratitude and movement.
Let's start with gratitude. It's rightly called the happiness multiplier.
Gratitude is a state of thankfulness, appreciation, or a character strength that is just so strongly associated with higher levels of well-being, life satisfaction, and lower levels of depression.
The psychological effect is intuitive, right? It pulls your attention toward what is going right in your life rather than what is deficient or what you lack.
But what's truly fascinating here is the direct physiological mechanism, the science behind it.
Yes. Scientific studies show that practicing gratitude lowers the level of the stress hormone, cortisol, by 23%. It measurably improves the quality of your sleep by 10%. It lowers blood sugar levels by 13%, and it improves both immune function and heart rate variability.
And this is due to a strong neuroscience connection. Gratitude literally changes your brain.
It influences the brain by activating the medial prefrontal cortex. It directly influences the release of key neurotransmitters.
Hmm.
It causes a surge of dopamine, which is associated with happiness and reward.
And it boosts the level of serotonin in the anterior cingulate cortex, which regulates mood.
You are quite literally training your brain to seek out and reward the positive. You're creating a positive feedback loop.
So what are the most effective interventions we should be integrating into our daily lives?
The methods are simple, but they require consistency. Gratitude lists, or just counting your blessings, even for young adolescents, have been shown to be effective quick boosts.
And gratitude journaling.
Gratitude journaling, where you write in detail about a few things you are genuinely thankful for, has been shown to have long-term effects on mental well-being and life satisfaction.
And what's the most powerful social intervention?
Writing gratitude letters. If you write a detailed letter to someone who has positively impacted your life, and this is the crucial part, you deliver and read that letter to them. The social impact, the strengthening of that relationship is enormous and yields deep happiness for both of you.
The benefits extend beyond mood too, right?
Absolutely. Studies show that grateful people exhibit less depression, less physical aggression, and are far more motivated to engage in pro-social behavior and self-improvement efforts. It's an engine for both ethical and emotional growth.
Okay, finally, let's look at physical activity and positive mental health. We all know exercise helps manage depression and anxiety, but research confirms it also directly and independently increases positive mental health, happiness, and overall contentment.
The key finding here relates to frequency and volume, and it shows that even small changes yield immense returns. A systematic review revealed a significant threshold effect.
They compared inactive people to those who were insufficiently active, sufficiently active, and very active.
And compared to the inactive people, the odds ratio of being happy was 20% higher for those who are just insufficiently active.
So even doing a little bit helps.
A little bit helps a lot. It was 29% higher for sufficiently active and a massive 52% higher for very active individuals.
But here is the critical takeaway for those of us who feel overwhelmed by exercise goals.
The benefits plateaued. Happiness levels were essentially the same, whether people exercised 150 to 300 minutes a week or more than 300 minutes a week. The marginal psychological return diminishes rapidly after you reach that sufficient activity threshold.
This is such a powerful validation of the small, consistent change philosophy we've been talking about. You don't have to be training for a marathon to get the profound psychological benefits.
Not at all. Even engaging in physical activity just once a week provided a measurable increase in the odds of being happy compared to being completely inactive. It just reinforces that core idea. Action precedes motivation. You don't wait until you feel like it. You just do it.
We have covered such diverse and deep ground today. We've moved from the baseline challenge of the hedonic treadmill all the way to the fundamental blueprints for resilience and flourishing.
We started by equipping ourselves with those immediate regulation tools, the physiological reset of mindful breathing, and the pause afforded by the step in rain techniques. These are our first line of defense against emotional overwhelm.
And we provided a detailed map of our internal processes using CBT's ABC model, helping us identify those catastrophic cycles of low mood and anxiety. We armed ourselves with practical, systematic tools like behavioral activation and the profound shift required by graded exposure and thought challenging.
Then we zoomed out. We looked at the global, enduring views on the meaning of life, contrasting the Western hedonic maximization of pleasure with Eastern ideals of self-transcendence, harmony with the cosmos, and the spiritual acceptance of suffering as part of a virtuous life, structurally captured by the beautiful balance of Ikigai.
And finally, we confirmed that our daily, consistent practices matter so much. We can leverage the physiological benefits of gratitude, that dopamine and serotonin boost, and the measurable happiness increase that comes from consistent, even moderate, movement.
But if there is one single, enduring lesson that cuts through all the clinical tools and all the philosophical debates, it is the one revealed by the Harvard study from decades of rigorous data collection.
Relationships are the ultimate life hack.
They really are. Tending to your close relationships at age 50 is the strongest predictor of your physical health and your happiness at age 80.
It simplifies the complexity of the good life down to something so human. Focusing on relationships, feeling securely attached, feeling like you can count on others, is the most vital and predictive form of self-care you can possibly practice.
It is literally more important than perfecting your diet or obsessing over your cholesterol.
As the learner, you now possess this complex map, showing that every pathway to a good life, whether it's clinical or philosophical, relies on consistent daily effort and aligning your actions with your deepest values.
And knowledge is only valuable when it's understood and applied in real life.
So this raises the final provocative thought for you to consider today. If gradual, consistent effort is the true engine of long-term emotional resilience, what is the single smallest, most sustainable practice you will integrate into your routine starting right now?
Will it be 15 seconds of the S-stop-E technique when a thought hits you? Or sending a quick gratitude text to one person you care about?
The good life isn't a destination. It's the sum of those tiny, repeated acts of internal cultivation.